Among the many SUVs of this era that I oogle and ogle about, the Honda Pilot certainly deserves recognition for being one of the most iconic and influential SUVs of many young people's lives, including myself. For example, I'm sure either your parents or someone else's parents that you knew drove one of these Pilots. Today we have the pleasure of going down memory lane and looking at one of the best generations of the Honda Pilot, the second gen. So yes, welcome to the second generation of Honda's fantastic Pilot. Honda first introduced the second gen Pilot in January of 2008 at the New York International Auto Show, and by the time they were ready, these were out for the 2009 model year and went all the way to 2015. Honda made the second gen Pilot evidently larger than its predecessor, as it's wider, taller, and longer than the first gen. Of course, because it's Honda, the Pilot uses a similar platform to its siblings in the lineup, the Ridgeline and Odyssey, that use similar engines, and even on the Acura side with the MDX and ZDX, even though those were a little bit mechanically different. The Pilot was refreshed for the 2012 model year, and the exterior was slightly tweaked. It got a different grille, slightly different headlights, different wheels, just overall a more fancy package. Since the original conception of the first gen Pilot, these have all been built in Lincoln, Alabama, and the new Pilots are still built there. Honda made the Pilot directly for North America, but they still exported it to other countries as well, you'd be surprised, like Ukraine, Russia, South Korea, the Philippines, the Middle East. These things are everywhere. This particular Pilot belongs to my good friend Karna. A few of his other cars have been on the channel as well. This one happens to be his latest acquisition, well, second latest acquisition. A 2011 Pilot EXL in the dark cherry pearl color. As you can see, this Pilot, among many other Pilots of this era, is suffering from fading clear coat on the hood and also the roof. Some of these, especially the white ones, the paint really peels off on those. I see so many white Hondas with peeling paint. If you ignore the fading paint, this thing really runs and drives like it's new. It's sitting at 182,000 miles on it, and it has a whole other 100,000 easily. The original MSRP of a 2011 Pilot EXL when it was new was just about $36,000. Karna does have a few notable accessories on this car that aren't on it right now. He has the OEM Honda roof box. He also has the factory tent that attaches to the trunk. In some of these Pilots, you could actually get an accessory sport grille. Honda's also always been pretty simple when it comes to trim levels as well, and that's no exception for the Pilot. These started at the LX, which was just over $30,000, then the EX, EXL, and then inside that you could choose the EXL with Navi, and then the EXL with Navi and rear entertainment, and then you could choose the Touring, which was a little bit over $42,000. As far as Pilots are concerned, we only got them with one powertrain option, and thankfully it was a good one. For example, the Toyota Highlander, its main rival at the time, could come with a base 2.7 liter four-cylinder, so thankfully we got the V6 as the standard option. In the second gen, we get the J35Z4. It's a 3.5 liter single overhead cam unit. Because this one is a more modern version of the J series, it features Honda's variable cylinder management, also known as VCM. And in this application, it makes 250 horsepower and 253 pound-feet of torque. Very linear power figures to get this 4,500 pound SUV to 60 miles an hour in 7.3 seconds. This engine is paired to a bulletproof 5-speed automatic transmission and Honda's variable torque management all-wheel drive system. On the back of the car, of course, it says it's four-wheel drive, but it's not really four-wheel drive, even though it is a pretty capable system for the time. The rear differential can work as a limited slip differential to an extent to help with traction not only from front to back, but also side to side for the rear axle as well. This certainly is a system that one day I'd like to get more experience with, because the new Honda VTM4 system is really impressive, but I'd like to see the original. well. In terms of MPGs, Honda rated this at 16 in the city and 22 on the highway. This J-Series engine uses a timing belt. It's supposed to be replaced every 7 or 8 years or 100,000 miles. If you don't, you can actually risk blowing up your engine because these are interference engines. So if the heartbeat of the car is off, things inside won't be aligned and then mess everything up. Besides the timing belt and water pump, you'll probably have to run into the spark plugs. Just regular maintenance. It's a regular car, which makes it so appealing. In Honda's lineup, the Pilot has always been Honda's largest SUV. This thing is sitting at 190.9 inches long, making it 2 inches longer than a comparable Highlander, 11 inches longer than the CR-V of this era, and then believe this, 6 inches shorter than the Honda Accord Cross Tour. That was 196 inches long. This isn't the biggest Honda. I would like to review a Cross Tour though, but back to the Pilot. As for wheel options, the LX got steel wheels, then the EX and EXL got these 17-inch alloy wheels, and then the Touring got a different design. Honda really made both ends of the Pilot appealing, with a great powertrain and then also an abundance of space in the trunk. This one, because it's just the EXL, doesn't have a power tailgate, but the EXL with navigation and the Touring could get a power tailgate, so you could open and close your trunk with the push of a button. We can pop this window here, which is really nice, and I actually do really like this because it makes everything in the trunk here very accessible without having to open the trunk itself. I also think the dual exhaust is kind of athletic looking on this thing as well, which I like. But behind the third row seat, you actually get a little bit more space than my XC90 at 18 cubic feet of volume. If you fold the third row flat, which is very easy, then you get 47 cubic feet of volume. And then if you want maximum storage capacity in the Pilot, you can fold the second and third row flat and then get 87 cubic feet of volume. There's a really neat underfloor storage compartment as well, which is deep. There's also another deep storage compartment on the left side of the trunk as well. So you can see the lift over height isn't that tall. It's just a very easy SUV to live with. Again, this one doesn't have the power tailgate, but you can tow with your Pilot. Honda rates all-wheel drive Pilots to tow a maximum of 5,000 pounds. If you have a front-wheel drive Pilot, which I don't know why, you can do 3,500 pounds. Thankfully, because it's Honda, they made it pretty easy to get into the third row of the Pilot, even back in the day. All we have is this lever on the side here, and then the seat easily slides forward and backwards, so you get a decent amount of space to get into the back of here. As you can see in the third row of the Pilot, things aren't that bad because this thing is a box. This rear seat is slid all the way back in its tracks, and I'm 5'9", and if I sit normally, my knees actually still don't touch the back of these seats. I can actually also fit my feet underneath the second row seats as well, so I'm actually comfortable. Thankfully, the third row passengers do have air vents back here. There's also cup holders on each side, 2 on each side. And then there's a storage compartment for each side as well. There's one actual compartment here, and then there's a little cubby. Second row seat passengers will certainly not be disappointed. There's a lot of space back here. These second row seats do slide. It's stuck.
Whee! I tell you what, man, it don't go down to Antarctica, you ain't gonna get that damn thing to work with a little big old bottom like he got.
The second row seats in this do slide forwards and backwards, but the one on this side is stuck. In the center, we do have an armrest, thankfully, that is pretty soft on the sides with 2 reasonably sized cup holders and a little pad that you could put your flip phone in. In terms of other amenities, this model has a third climate control zone. I believe that was standard on EX models and above. And we have 2 air vents as well, but we don't have heated rear seats. That's totally fine. There is also a power outlet underneath that, so there is connectivity in here, even for the age. Both the outboard rear seat passengers have 2 cup holders each. There's also 2 compartments for storage each on each door card. There's 2 individual pockets on the back sides of the front seats. There's a whole lot of storage in this car. Now it is the moment to drive the new, well, not the new Pilot, this isn't 2011, but welcome to the interior of the second generation Pilot. First of all, because it already is pretty hot in here, we can start this thing. This doesn't have any push button start or smart key, anything like that. Pilot didn't get that until 2016. This is the normal key fob. For these Hondas, you have the lock, unlock, trunk release, and panic button. Very simple. This is the key that sent Honda to the 2000s. But all we have to do is just put the key in the ignition and start it. But yes, welcome to the driving experience of this new Pilot. It actually, well, it's not new. I keep saying the new Pilot. It just feels like a new car, even though this has 183,000 miles, excuse me. Right now you could see I'm on this more gravel, non-pavement road, and it takes the bumps off pavement very well, kind of surprisingly well for being unibody, but the 17s really help that. It feels good. I like that this feels very maneuverable, very effortless power steering. I haven't really driven the second gen that much. I've more ridden in them than driven them, and it certainly does feel bigger and more like a tank compared to the first gen Pilot. This just feels like a new age vehicle, and it has a nice feeling on the road. Of course, this isn't anything sporty or anything off-road capable like a 4Runner, but it still is kind of a good medium on that. We'll listen to how the power sounds in just a second. I wanted to talk about the interior a little bit. First of all, you can see this Pilot continues the design language of Honda of this era. You have the Accord style steering wheel. It's 4-spoked and leather wrapped with this EXL model. Has a nice thick feeling to the hand. It really makes me feel like I'm driving a car. The buttons on the left control the audio. The buttons on the right control the cruise control, and that's it, thankfully. And then behind this steering wheel, you can see this EXL has automatic headlights, but the Pilot does not come with rain sensing wipers. That's what you would get the MDX for. The gauges are also very easy to read. It's a very simple font, just typical Honda, especially of this era. There is a little bit of a trip computer on the gauges, so you can see a little bit, but if you had the navigation system, that's where you'd get a little bit more information. I'm gonna turn off the air conditioning so we have full pan. We can see how this J35 does. It's not quick, and it certainly does feel like it takes more effort to get going because it's a V6. You have to wind it out more. Of course, there's more road noise, there's a little bit more wind noise, but otherwise I'm still pretty isolated from the road. The turning circle of this is also tighter. I couldn't do something like this with the XC90. It's smooth power. You don't really feel the acceleration in this because it is just very smooth. And that's kind of a good thing, especially if you have children. They're not going to be getting jostled around too much, but you can really feel, I can feel myself why one would go for the MDX over this if you wanted driving dynamics. The Pilot is not a vehicle for driving dynamics. That is certainly one thing. It does drive well, and because it's a Honda, it has good steering, good solid suspension, so it does feel good. It's just a very neutral experience all around. But it's not a bad thing. This is perfect if you just want to drive. And it still is enjoyable. The V6 has a good sound to it, but it isn't quick. This doesn't feel too big when you're driving it either. It's a nice manageable size. We can go. Yeah, this, like, the engine sounds good. The engine is very quiet, actually. The rest of the interior does feel nice. Of course, it's not a luxury SUV, so you're not going to be wowed by the materials because most of the stuff is plastic, of course, but at least the plastic doesn't fade or wear out. The only things that wear out are the simulated leather, because I just don't think it's real leather, but the only things that actually fade are the materials for the armrests on both the center console and also the driver's door card. Whenever you see the eco light pop up on the gauges, it's because this is going in its VCM mode. It's going into either 3 or 4 cylinder mode, depending on whichever it thinks to save fuel. Again, if I owned one of these, I would probably do the VCM muzzler relatively quickly after buying it. But it doesn't feel huge like the new Pilot because it doesn't have a ridiculous hood, so you can still see over the hood. All the windows are big, it's shaped like a box, the mirrors are big, the seats are thankfully comfortable. This EXL has a powered driver and passenger side seat, but the passenger side seat is only 4-way power adjustable, which is totally fine. Both of the front seats thankfully offer a good amount of support, so I've actually been comfortable. I do like that. It's kind of a, not sporty, but it's just a reassuring feeling that the seats give you. I don't really slide around in them. The front seats are heated, which is nice. We also have dual zone climate control up front here. There are a lot of buttons in the center of this car, which can be a little bit overwhelming at first, but it really isn't that bad. The controls are easily laid out, so really nothing to complain about. You can also see the more dated pre-facelift head unit in this Pilot. It has a blue tint to it that was only available on the 09 to 11 Pilots. This one does have a 6-disc CD changer, but it doesn't have anything like the upgraded audio. That's what you would get in the touring model. This model does have a backup camera, even though this one doesn't have the navigation system. Just like a lot of vehicles of this era, the backup camera is actually in the rearview mirror, which is actually pretty cool. The brakes have a good feeling. When you're taking turns, it doesn't feel like the steering has a delay to it. It is hydraulic steering, thankfully, so it feels good. It's a reassuring weight to the wheel. Hello. This neighborhood road is a little bit bumpier than some of the other roads around here, and thankfully, this thing really does take the bumps well. Of course, it's not on air suspension or anything like that, so you won't feel like you're gliding, but it does a dang good job. I would say it would keep the annoying children asleep in the back seat, so that's all it needs to do. The interior doesn't really make too much noise either. Like, I'm purposely driving in some of the bumps here, and it doesn't creak like the P2's interior. That's something I noticed. It feels well buttoned down in here. It doesn't rattle. It doesn't feel like a cheap car. This just feels really utilitarian. There's storage everywhere. There's storage in the dash, which I really like. There's a big glove box, a big center console. By the way, the center console has an aux jack and also a power outlet inside. The front door cards have plenty of storage as well. It's just really a well thought out interior. And then hustling it through these corners, I mean, I'm only doing 25, 30. It's not that much to handle. It doesn't feel like a handful. Of course, the MDX will be more sharp and direct, but this does a pretty good job at managing corners as well. It doesn't float, thankfully. It just feels good. And these things are great on the highway as well. Like right now, it's not that bad. I don't know if this has original suspension on it or not, but even with the suspension on it as it is, it feels good. The suspension doesn't clunk either. No play in the wheel. It's just good. It's just a car you can just frickin' drive. And that, my friends, was an extended look at the renowned second generation Honda Pilot. I really love these things. Again, special thanks to Karna for letting us look at his Pilot today. It really has been a treat. Let me know in the comments if you have a Pilot, because I know these things are great. I appreciate you all for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. And again, thank you for hanging out today. Thankfully, it's a nice day today, but again, enough of my rambling. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, peeps.